I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal. She believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for.
The Dateable podcast features real stories from real people of how they make modern dating work or not. Each episode will not only offer you a new perspective on dating, but will also change the way you date. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear commentary from my producer, Julie Krafchick, and other surprise co-hosts.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. We want to talk about the gold standard. First, I want to define what the gold standard is, and then I will introduce our guest. The gold standard is like that first boyfriend or girlfriend you were madly in love with that nobody else can ever live up to. Maybe you had this gold standard 20, maybe you were 12. It could run the gamut.
It could be 40. It could be
40. Or maybe you just haven't had it yet.
Yeah.
But the gold standard is someone who you really fell deeply in love with, or your definition of love, who made such an impression on you that no one else subsequently can really compare to that love. Or at least that's how I define it. But we have Caroline here today, who is our guest, here to talk about her gold standard. Okay, Let me just give you guys a little intro of who she is. She's 35 years old, lived in San Francisco for 5 years, originally from DC, and she's pretty single. You're here to talk about the gold standard, the first boyfriend who no one else can live up to. Let's start with, when did you guys meet?
We met when I was about 25.
Okay. So 10 years ago.
Yes.
And how did you guys meet?
We met at a happy hour that a mutual friend invited me to, who I found out actually also knew him. And I actually saw him across the room, and I just knew I wanted to talk to him.
So 10 years ago, you've been in San Francisco. 5 years ago, what city was this in?
This was in San Diego.
Okay. So what was it about him that made you go over and want to talk to him?
I think he was just really physically attractive to me. And he was tall, which for me, I'm pretty tall. So I tend to scan the crowd. And if someone's meeting above my eye level, that's a good thing. So I saw him. He looked really, really cool and interesting. And I wanted to meet him.
And then how did you meet him?
Well, I was with a friend who was a guy who probably wanted to ask me out, but instead I go, "Who's that guy over there? Please introduce me."
Wow.
He was nice enough to do it, so that's how we met.
Okay, so then I guess how long did your relationship last? What was all of that like?
Didn't last a long time, but that doesn't mean I didn't feel a lot out of it.
Oh, yeah.
So we met, I think it was about May
Okay.
of that year, and we dated for about 3 months, and then it was on and off for the next 6 months.
Okay.
And then I actually ended up moving for a job. So at that point, we decided to be friends.
So pretty, I guess, consistently for 3 months, and then another 6 months that's kind of sporadically.
Yes.
So, okay. But you're right. I mean, it really doesn't take long to fall for someone. So
Exactly.
what was this love like?
I think for me, the thing I keep thinking about is one of our first dates. And it was one of those dates where it wasn't totally planned, and we had decided to go see a play, but we had some extra time before the play and after the play. So we were just driving around in San Diego, getting food, hanging out at the beach. And for me, one moment that I always think about and sort of define this gold standard was the first time we kissed. So that happened that night. He broke into a friend's apartment complex that had a pool and a hot tub.
Ooh.
So, in San Diego, you got your bathing suit in the back of the car for emergency situations such as this. So we break into this complex and go from the pool to the hot tub.
Okay.
Actually, no, we started in the hot tub and then we went into the pool.
So some spontaneity
Wow.
right here.
Yes.
And then you got arrested. And then
Almost.
it was really memorable.
I think the weird part of it was, so we jumped from the hot tub into the pool and we kissed. And at that moment, the world started to spin for both of us. And I thought I was going to pass out or vomit or go under. And I go, "Oh my gosh, the world is spinning." And he's like, "I feel sick." And he's like, "Wait, I've seen this in movies. It's the kiss that made your head spin." And it was probably one of the coolest moments ever. Could have been from the temperature change, but we chalked it up to the kiss that made your head spin.
Kiss.
Yeah.
It was. And nobody drowned that
So
night.
I guess just what else was it about him? What was it about your connection that made him so memorable?
I think it was the first time I spent a whole day with someone and didn't get sick of them. We just had a lot to talk about. I remember we went to the play and I wanted to hold hands with him, but I didn't because I was scared. But just this desire for I really like this person and we haven't known each other a ton, but I just feel like I want to get to know him and I want to know more. Kind of that first day, that first kiss, and he had made a comment to me that he sort of hadn't ever felt as close to anyone as he did that night. I always enjoy a verbal affirmation of what I'm feeling, so that was nice to hear.
Nice.
What do you think was the ultimate end of this relationship? I know he moved away, but what about before that? Or you moved away?
I ended up moving. So I think for me, I almost wanted more oftentimes from him. And he was pretty interesting, figuring out his next career move, liked to do a lot of stuff on his own.
Was he also 25?
He was 1 year older than me,
Okay,
but
so around the
quite
same.
close in age. I think what ended up happening is he ended up meeting someone else that he liked better than me.
Oh.
Whereas I felt a lot of love for him, I think on his side was more like. And one of his guy friends told me that he always really liked me, but when he met this other woman, he just fell really hard for her.
So within the time that you guys were dating, did he meet
This
her?
is once we were on and off.
Oh, okay.
And he kind of knew I was moving, but it was sort of all the feelings I think I felt for him, he ended up feeling for someone else.
So what made it end the first time, after the consistent 3 months?
He was just a little bit aloof. And I had gone to a conference. So when I came back from the conference, we met up and we're talking. And, he actually said to me, "I'm not treating you right. You deserve more.
Wow.
I think we should take a step back." Which is, of course, not what I wanted to hear. And I thought, no, I'll win him over. Let's just keep tumultuously dating. And it's fine.
Yep, we've all
But
done that.
That does not work.
What's interesting about this is that, now we're redefining what the gold standard is. It's not so much the gold standard of how he treated you,
No.
but the gold standard of how you felt about
Yes.
him. Okay, so
Yes.
let's redefine that so we know the baseline for
But
what we're
it's
talking
still
about.
that no one can live up to. That definition you
Yes.
gave is still true because it's your perception.
And Before you met him, had you ever been in love before or felt this deeply for someone before?
I had felt connections with people. I had dated a little bit in college and graduate school, but I hadn't really had, I think, such an intense connection. Or I hadn't had someone verbally affirm that what I was feeling was also what they were feeling. So it felt mutual at first. And then I was really sad to kind of see that dwindle when, for me, it was still there.
Gotcha.
Did you guys say, I love you?
We did not say I love you.
Oh, okay.
But did you feel it?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't want to go there in case he wasn't there.
Was there ever a time that you wanted to say it and you didn't?
Probably, but I think because I started noticing some signs that he was pulling away a little bit, I was afraid to kind of go out there because I was just worried what the response would be.
Got it.
So 10 years later, you're still thinking about him.
Oh, this is bad.
What's the situation? Are you guys still in contact?
He is married to the woman that he met after me.
Oh, really?
He
Okay.
had feelings for. And
so you fluffed him up for
yes,
her.
Unfortunately. So they have been together for several years, and I actually had seen them together like probably 9 years ago at a mutual friend's house. I had been visiting, and I saw how different he was with her. He was really into it. He was very loving. He was very domesticated, which was very different than how I knew him. He used to like drink and go out a lot, but he was very. They brought a pie to this event that we were at, and I was like, "You make pies? What is this?" So that was interesting. And then I actually also saw him this past year after not seeing or hearing from him in a while. We had kind of had the occasional email, but I ended up visiting him. He lives in a different state now, and I was there on vacation. So we met up, and I spent some time with them.
So how have you guys stayed in contact during that? Like, is it through Facebook or like how have...
So the weird thing is he doesn't have Facebook or Instagram.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure if that's good or bad because I don't know if I should be
I think that's a good thing.
It's probably a good
thing. Caroline, that's a good thing.
It's probably best that I don't see everything. But mostly via email.
Okay.
So we had reached out. I had asked him about some travel plans once because he had lived in the country I was visiting. And then we had a mutual friend, had some news. So we kind of shared that. And then when I went out where I ended up visiting him, I actually just kind of emailed him and said I was going to be around and was curious if he wanted to meet, and he was favorable to the idea.
And you were there just for like personal or work?
Yes, I was there for fun. Okay. No, but I was like, well, I'm 2 hours away. I've rented a car. Like, I seem to have this fun idea of just let's just figure things out and understand what happened and how people are.
So when you saw him, did those old feelings come back?
I was definitely still attracted to him.
Okay.
For sure. He definitely looked like he hadn't aged very much in 10 years.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I know, he was still attractive. He still looked cool. He actually, we met at a bar, so I was sitting at the bar and he kind of came in and saw me from behind. And then we chatted, he bought me a drink. And yeah, I mean, I think that sort of like witty repartee was like still there. We were chatting. It was a lot of fun. And we ended up kind of spending several hours together. And then his wife came and met us for a drink.
Wow.
So question for you. I guess, how did you figure out he was married in the first place? Did he tell you? Like, how did that go down?
So what happened was after I'd moved away, we still had mutual friends.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew that he had met someone. I didn't know what her name was. And that time I came back to visit the mutual friend, they had invited him and her over. So that was the first time I met her. And then we also had coffee that same time. And I actually asked him some questions. I guess I was pretty bold. And he told me he was very serious about her. And, you know, I kind of thought something might happen.
Got it.
What was it like meeting the wife?
You know, yeah, that's always talking about a gold standard or whatever standard. I always feel like in this situation, I'm almost underwhelmed in a sense because I tend to think, oh, well, they dumped me. They must be with someone like way awesome. And you're like, oh, she looks like someone I'd be friends with. Or
just
she's normal.
Kind of normal. And it's like, oh, okay, like kind of looked a bit similar to me. And, you know, she had more advanced degrees than me and, you know, had some other traits that were different. But I kind of thought, oh, she's someone I might be friends with.
Yeah. So did he ever know like how deep your feelings were to him?
I think he probably knew. I didn't necessarily articulate it, but once I knew I was going to move for work, we did meet up and, you know, he essentially didn't think he could give me what I wanted. And he kept saying, you deserve more. And, you know, some of my friends had thought that he kind of wasn't seeing me enough and wasn't showing up to some of my work functions with me.
But
so
even when he was aloof, you still had these strong feelings for him.
Do you think it's
because he was aloof?
I mean, that could be part of it, right? If you have that longing and then you're getting like the breadcrumbs and you're like, oh, yay, yay, yay.
Yeah.
But I think it just was like, sometimes I think you meet people and for you, they just work. And I think he was one of those people that could have worked for me if he had felt similarly. And the weird thing was when I met him later, after he had met the woman who was to be his wife, he told me that he just couldn't get enough of her. And he was like following her and he was like waiting for her at the coffee shop that she always went to. And it was all those like psycho behaviors that I kind of did with him. I was like, oh man,
you're doing
like
it
now. And I was like, well, that must be real for him then, because that's how I felt.
It's an interesting thing, like when you feel that way and someone does it and then they do it to someone else.
Right.
And like you said, she's not some unicorn. She's just a normal person who he's just deeply connected to.
Yes.
And you can't explain that. That's just
chemistry.
chemistry.
Exactly. It was that undeniable chemistry.
Had you guys like had like defining the relationship conversation, or was it just kind of like, so like it felt natural that you were exclusive? Like what was that status in the 3 months?
Yeah, we didn't have the conversation, but it was just sort of like, we both hadn't dated much in the past, so it was sort of just a new kind of fun experience for both of us. And so we didn't really term anything. I mean, our friends would see us together, but he was a very attractive man, so a lot of people would hit on him or,
So if you could redo that relationship again, what would you do differently?
Ooh, that's a great question. I've totally thought about that. I think what I've learned over the years is that I almost thought before that if I was maybe less opinionated and just more open to things, I would be more desirable to someone, because I'd be easy to get along with. Like I could just be open to things. I'd be like, whatever. Like I don't have very strong opinions. But I think now the older I get, the more I'm like, I think the strong opinions make me interesting and make me seem serious and make me seem like I know what I want.
Yeah.
So if I could do it again, I don't think I would take any crap from him. Like after he stood me up once, I would be like, what is this? Like unacceptable. And like, you better take me out to dinner and apologize instead of just saying, oh, it's okay, we'll meet next time. I think I just stand up for myself a little bit more. And I probably would articulate my feelings. Like I kind of have no shame anymore. Like I would just say, I really like you and I think we should date. And, if he said no, I'd have to say, okay. But I think it was almost like I liked him so much that I didn't want to do anything to ruin it if he was maybe
just
on
one
the fence.
more day with him would be better than trying to, define this
and
now.
not want to rock the boat. Like in here,
Yes.
especially if you're already kind of feeling like he's not giving you enough. Like you don't want to make it that he comes out and says it because it could potentially end the whole thing.
But interestingly enough, people would say that's also an indicator of a bad relationship.
Yes.
It's when you feel like you're walking on eggshells,
Absolutely.
you can't rock the boat, you can't bring up conversations because you're so afraid of losing them.
Absolutely. So I guess fast forward 10 years, what's your dating life been like? And how do you think this has impacted it?
That's such a great question. I would say my dating life is, well, I'm kind of on a hiatus right now. I would say over the years, a lot of people I've met, I tend to go back to him. This guy in San Diego, because when I felt so intensely about him and what he described feeling for his wife and how he would go to the places she liked, and he would really just it was just sort of like he had to be there. He wanted to be around her. That was a feeling that I thought I needed to feel in order to know this relationship was right. So there was this level of intensity that I felt like I needed to have to know I was interested in someone.
So you said okay, this person doesn't make me feel the way he did. This must not be the right fit.
Right.
And then discounted people.
Right.
And do you still feel that way?
I think now, since it's been a long time and I've dated several people since then, it gets kind of less and less. But I think that what I described about one of our early dates and that kiss that made kind of the world spin, those moments I don't forget. And maybe they become rosier over time. You forget the bad, remember the good. And for some reason, those movie star moments, I would say, kind of still stick out at me.
Of course.
And I'll still kind of compare. And I don't seem to have that level of romance anymore, just in the dates I've had so far.
Has there been anyone serious in this time that's maybe they didn't live up to the feeling, but you gave it more of a chance?
I mean, I think I've definitely been in more adult relationships where we've defined things, we've had the talk, things have moved further along. And those have been good, but, I still think those relationships didn't work out. I'm currently single, so those relationships didn't necessarily work out. And in a way that makes me wonder if, do I wait for that intensity of feeling? Do I go for someone I can more rationally kind of get somewhere with? I feel like I've tried both and jury's still out.
Do you think they didn't work out because you didn't feel like what you felt for him? Do you think that was the reason? Or
I think a lot of the people I've dated since then, it was more of a mismatch of goals, where I tended to kind of want more of that traditional family, and they seemed more into like just weren't ready for that or weren't sure about kids, or it definitely seemed like we broke up over
just
more
because
adult.
of him.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we did a poll on our Instagram,
Oh, yeah.
and the question was, do you think chemistry needs to be there from the beginning, or can it be developed over time? Basically, it was an even result, 40-60 or something like that. But it really depends on if someone's had one or the other before,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That becomes your baseline. If you've had that intense chemistry in the beginning, then you look for it next time. You feel like that has to be there. And for those, some people, believe it or not, haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
So they believe chemistry can be developed over time.
Interesting.
What's your take on that now?
So I felt like it was love at first sight with him. So I believe in love at first sight, and I've actually had it happen a few other times since then. One time it was someone at work who was not single, so obviously I didn't act on it, but I knew those feelings could come back, and for someone in the right situation, it could happen again. So that was nice. I think with chemistry growing over time, maybe it depends on how long the time is. I recently saw a friend I hadn't seen in a long time who kind of underwent some drastic health changes and had like really gotten into shape, and I was like, oh, like I wouldn't have considered you before, but like, oh, interesting. And we've known each other for a long time. But I tend to think friendship for me develops over time. If it's not a love connection initially, it's like friend zoned.
Do you think having this gold standard has helped your dating life in any way?
Interesting. I mean, I guess I feel like it's been maybe a little detrimental is not giving people a chance, who I don't feel super excited about initially.
Yeah.
But I also think it's like I know what I want and I have a type, and I'm not afraid to tell people that when they offer to set me up. I have no shame showing someone this guy's photo or that guy in the street looks like my ex. Ooh, I'm into him. Or there's like certain qualities, that I think are appealing to me, where someone's from, or sort of their level of verbalness. Like I really like a guy who can chat it up and can hold himself socially. And this guy was very good at that.
Caroline, I'm struggling here because the only redeeming factors about this person is that he's hot. That's what I keep hearing.
And he's
very
spontaneous and he made you feel good.
But
in the moment.
First and foremost, he's hot. If he wasn't hot, these spontaneous moments would be creepy. So let's just get that out of the way.
This is true. I have to
Very
be
good
physically
point.
into him.
You have to be physically into him. So
Yes.
what else was it about this guy that made you feel so connected to him? What are some of the ways his personality really attracted you?
Totally. I feel like this makes me sound very shallow, but no, there were things below the surface. He was really charming. He had a lot of wit, and just the way we could talk together, and we could just shoot it back. And it's rare that I find someone I talk very quickly. We just kind of had this banter, and even when I saw him last year after a really long time, it was just like back and forth, and you're just kind of in step with each other. The other thing about him, I think that, and funny enough, I took this away from the relationship, is he always had this idea of luck in the world. And he saw like people and things as being good. And I came from grew up in more of a pessimistic household, where I was more afraid of the world and afraid of things. So one kind of funny story to kind of explain this is when I first moved to San Diego, I was very afraid about walking barefoot on places other than the beach, because I thought you could step on something or whatever, get tetanus and die.
Sounds like my mom would say.
Classic, my mom, don't do that. It's bad.
Yeah.
And he was very much like, oh, no, I walk barefoot all the time. I surf, I'm in the ocean. So we went on a date to the zoo, and he decided to walk barefoot the entire time, just to prove to me that, hey, I'm not going to get sick and live a little. That was sort of a turning point for me in changing my outlook on the world.
Yeah,
that's lasting.
So I have to say this because I did a lot of research on this first love kind of psychology behind it. And all these articles and studies point to the fact that this gold standard is like cocaine, all right? In a way that you're addicted to the way it makes you feel, but it actually has no benefits to you. So when you're describing this person, it's the way they carry themselves that is completely isolated from you that you're attracted to. Someone who pushes you out of your comfort zone. Someone who shows you something different or a new way of thinking about things. But it's actually in no relation to you. They're just being themselves.
Yeah.
And that's how Coke is. That's how drugs are. Drugs are just the way they are.
That's interesting.
And then you just latch onto the drugs because of the way they make you feel. But the drugs aren't there to provide for you. Yeah. So these studies say you're so latched onto your first love. It just like the way you think about skydiving too. It's the first time you dove into something. Yeah. And it's so memorable. It's embedded into your memory. And so having that as a gold standard, you'll never find that again because you'll never experience it for the first time again.
So I totally agree with everything you just said, but I think the part that I'm questioning is the benefit to you portion, because I think that the first person does actually provide a benefit. And this is where I struggle is, was it the person or was it because like you got this taste of like what a relationship was like? Because you said this was like your first like real time actually dating someone. And I've been there before too. And it's like you've had tastes of it before, but never like someone to that level. So you get used to it and you really start to like enjoy having someone around and enjoy someone like to be affectionate with and make you feel well and like have sex regularly and like all this stuff. So I think there is a benefit to you. I guess the question is it because it's the first experience or is it really the person?
I want to make this very clear. There's a clear difference here. One is benefits you extract from the person, and two is the benefits they're providing for you. Yeah. So again, that example with Coke, you're extracting the benefits from Coke without Coke giving them to you.
That's true.
So when you're extracting companionship, sex, activity partner, actually independent of that person, you're extracting those benefits. But someone who is there to treat you well is someone who provides those benefits to you. Have you experienced someone who treats you so well that you thought, oh my gosh, this person makes me feel so loved and secure and so supported?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably not yet. I've definitely dated people who have been more of that provider, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's ultimately what I'm now looking for.
But I think that's interesting because we did another poll on Instagram.
Love Instagram.
We did another poll. What was it? Like, would you rather have like a series of really intense connections or one long, stable,
drawn out,
but like very
uneventful, complacent.
And people were 50-50 on it. And it was basically like a lot of it had to do with their experience before in a different way than what you said on the last survey or poll was if they had that complacent relationship, they wanted the opposite and vice versa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That was interesting. I think the other point, because I've been here as well, I totally get what you're saying. I think sometimes you tend to put someone on a pedestal, especially the more time that goes on, like you forget about the bad qualities.
Oh, totally.
And like only remember the good qualities. And then it makes it really hard for someone new to live up to it because they have both. And you're only comparing good qualities.
It's so true. And I think too, the age that I met him,
Yeah.
And he, the thing of him walking barefoot and making me realize like, oh my gosh, I should, loosen up. And, I think it was just maybe the age when I was sort of on my own, living on my own and doing my own things that like it helped me become who I am today.
Yeah.
I was probably just open to things at that point.
Well, that's what they say about like what is like a soulmate connection is here to teach you something about yourself and then move on. That's not like your life partner.
That's so sad.
But that's what they say, like a true definition of a soulmate.
Yeah, it's true.
Interesting.
It's someone that shakes up your soul and your core and how you view things, but not necessarily the person that's going to be that stable, lifelong partner.
And it just goes with timing. This other article says a lot of these feelings happen during major life events or transitions. So like your quarter life crisis when you're 25. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I don't know if I want to stay here. But I have this person here to show me something different to help me transform. Yeah. And that's why so many people fall in love like when they're in their adolescence, they're going through major life experiences. I do wonder about this because I'm always like, the next man I fall in love with, he probably will never love me as much as he did his first love. I always think about that. And some people would argue with me. They're like, no, it's a different kind of love.
Yeah.
But I just remember, I can honestly say right now, I will never love someone the way I love my first
I
love.
Probably won't either.
Because it was stupid love. You just fell. You didn't care about the fear and the rejection. Now we're equipped with all these tools and defense mechanisms and all this past experience. I can never love someone wholeheartedly the way I stupidly love my first love.
I think it depends on when you met that first love, right? Like if you met them when you were 12 or like 15, the level of love you would have for someone is just different. Like you are a child, basically.
Yeah.
So like there were definitely people in my life that I like really liked, but I didn't like meet the person that I was like in love with until like into my late 20s.
Yeah.
In theory, you could say, oh, your first person, but it wasn't. I guess it depends how you define first love. Was that your first boyfriend or was it your first like soul shaking, like this person means everything to me? And it's probably different for everyone.
It's different for everyone. You probably go through different iterations of what love is. My first love was my first boyfriend. We were in high school. We were 16. I lost my virginity to him. We did everything together. And this is a guy I poured my heart and soul to. And then my second like real love was a 3-month stint that made me fearful because I didn't want to lose him. He was someone I had never dated before and he made me feel alive again, but he probably didn't feel the same way about me, but that was a second memorable love. So what's the third? What's the third iteration, guys? So you have like the...
Maybe that's your husband.
Yeah, maybe
hopefully.
Maybe the third love is that
partner,
real love.
The life
is
partner.
That real love.
Well, I don't think real is the right word because I think all three
They're
of them
all real.
are real.
I agree.
They're different real. I think one is like the first awakening. The second one is like the way it shakes you. And then this third person is maybe the stable one.
So maybe should we be realistic that this long-lasting love that we're talking about won't be as soul-shaking?
Maybe. There's two extremes, right? There's one like, oh, I met this person. I'm actually not very physically attracted to them. I don't find them super interesting, but I had a good enough time. Let me see if it grows.
Yeah.
And then there is like someone that you're like, wow, I actually had a really great time with them. I find them attractive. Maybe it's not like the extreme that you felt that it was love at first sight, but I think there is ranges. I don't think it's like a polar opposite on that scale.
I don't know. I think the times I've met someone that I was like, holy cow, I'm so attracted to this person. We had such a good time. That's when I start getting in my own head. And that's when I fuck it up because I'm afraid of saying the wrong things. I'm being insecure. I'm checking my phone every 5 minutes.
Yep.
But the times that I met someone and said, this is an awesome person, we definitely clicked. It wasn't like, whoa, but it was still good enough. That's when I felt most
And you didn't
secure.
throw yourself out the window.
Maybe
for
it's
that
good
either.
enough.
Exactly.
Maybe like that is what it is.
But
It's
is that
not-
what they would call settling?
I don't know.
Actually had been thinking about that on the way
tell
here.
us more.
Read
What
it.
is settling?
Yeah, I read this actually somewhere. I'm like blanking on where it was. It was settling if you think it's settling.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you don't think it's settling, then it's not settling.
Yeah, is it a mindset? What were your thoughts on settling?
Well, I was thinking about it in terms of, is settling when you've had enough of a random sampling of what's out there and you've decided to take the average based on what I know and what I want.
And is settling a bad thing, right? Why is
You
there
would
such a
say-
negative connotation to it? Settling is when you're ready to settle.
Yeah, like settle down.
Yeah.
That makes it sound less bad than I'm
Stabling.
But settling gets a bad rap. It makes it feel like you are going under what you think you deserve.
You're reaching down as opposed to reaching up.
So I guess the question that remains for me, and I think it's not just you, Caroline, it's probably all of us. Like, why do we put these people on a gold standard that didn't work out in the first place?
A pedestal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, how about we take a quick break so I can tell you about our sponsor, Hourglass Cosmetics. I used to think luxury beauty brands were just about the branding. It was more of an indulgence than anything else. But then I discovered Hourglass Cosmetics and realized its extraordinary performance and innovation. I love that Hourglass is 100% cruelty-free, it's vegan, and it really works. All wrapped up in beautiful, luxurious packaging. My first introduction was the Caution Mascara, after reading that Allure magazine called it a lash lift in a tube. Its advanced vegan formula never fakes or smudges, even after wearing it all day. The tapered brush delivers endless length, intense volume, and lift. It's a game changer. Discover Hourglass like I did and experience unparalleled next-generation performance by visiting hourglasscosmetics.com/dateable and use the promo code DATEABLE to get free shipping with your purchase of a full-size Caution Mascara. That's Hourglass, spelled HOURGLASS cosmetics.com/dateable with the promo code DATEABLE, spelled DATEABLE. Now back to the show.
Like, why do we put these people on a gold standard that didn't work out in the first place?
A pedestal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's sort of like the outcome of that relationship was bad.
Right.
But why
And he didn't even treat you that well.
Right. Especially when you know that you weren't treated well.
Right.
That's like another
Exactly.
whole side of it. Yeah.
He point blank told me that, right?
Right.
And
Like,
so,
why has he remained this high level in your mind?
I mean, I can only assume it's because the intensity of my own feelings. So it's an internal gauge for me to know when I'm excited about someone. We had a sort of chemistry or a connection. And I feel like for me, when I haven't had that in a long time, it's sort of a nice memory to think back on. Oh, well, that was nice, when I was young and that happened. I don't know. I guess because it was so, I think of it so fondly, like I would just love to have that happen again. And I think because I've seen other people that I'm interested in that level of intensity, at least initially.
Yep.
I think that person's out there.
Yep.
Haven't seemed to have met them recently, but in a way it gives me hope.
Yeah.
So
That
how
I
do
will
you
find
think you'll
them.
actually meet this person if you have this other person?
Yeah, if
still
you're
there?
going around showing people your ex-boyfriend's photo as the gold standard, how are you ever going to move on
Like,
from
I get
this?
in theory, like you want to recreate what you had with him, but the reality is you'll never recreate it exactly.
Right.
Because it's a different person.
Yes, and hopefully the ending will be different and better.
Exactly. So how do you move forward?
I think that's maybe why I'm on a dating hiatus right now. Because I'm thinking through
You're like, I don't know.
where it's all gone wrong and right over the past several years. And I think what I can say is now I know what I want. And I have a very clear outcome I'm looking for. And I used to, as I was with him, stepping on eggshells, afraid to really say what I wanted. Now I'm just like, look, I want to have kids and I would like to get married. I'm just telling people this because I mean, not like the first 5 minutes, but it's sort of like I think things that I know that I want, I'm just going to be more open about it.
Yeah.
So that's not a reason later that we break up or, and I think like looking for that level of just initial spark to me is still, I think I'm 50-50. I mean, I think it does exist and that will indicate to me someone that I might be more likely to get along well with, but I'm also giving other people a chance that I don't have that kind of love at first sight with. But where we have a great connection, on a first date or we meet at an event and, I'd like to see them again. So I think for me, it just led to, hey, there's actually two paths here and I'm kind of open to both of them because I don't know which one's going to give me the outcome I want.
That's a good way to put it.
I think that's fair. I mean, you hear from couples who've been married for a long time and they would say the spark comes and goes. It's not like something that just dies down.
Right.
My friend was like, oh my God, the other day I looked at my husband and he took my breath away. And they've been married for 10 years. Because sometimes you just get it back and then sometimes it fades.
I would argue though, I feel like it needs, if it's not there in the very initial stage, I think it can grow over time. I've definitely had situations where the first time I met someone, there was no spark and it grew through friendship. But I think if it doesn't ever get to a point where there is a spark, like in a reasonable amount of time, then that's not a great situation.
What do you think is a reasonable amount of time? A reasonable amount of time for a spark.
It's interesting because it's like I am probably more like you, Caroline. Like I'm very much like I meet people. This is not just romantic. This is like friends, coworkers, anyone. Like I either like you or I don't like you. I'm very like instant. I think I can count on my hands the amount of times that relationships, again, not just romantic, platonic too, have changed dramatically for me. So I feel like all the great relationships I've had romantically have been people that I've had a relatively fast interest. However, I did have one that was a friend that I had zero interest. But then once it became, I don't know what that switch point was, to be completely honest, but like once it felt that way, I felt it. It wasn't like, oh, let me try. And all the people in my life that I've really tried with, because I've also been like, is this a bad path? Should I go down and go for these people that I'm not interested in? And I've tried for like months to be like, am I into this person? And it just never gets there. So I don't know what number is and days.
Because I feel like I did date someone who was stable and all my friends loved him and he was, they thought he was a great match for me. But what happened was I met, during the time we were dating, I met someone that I sparked with. Really sparked with. And I had sparked with him initially, but then as the spark was dwindling with him, I sparked really hard with another guy that I met at a networking event.
Wow.
And it was because I knew what that level of spark was for me that could mean something.
Right.
That then took away from the initial relationship of maybe like I need some level to be there or else I think, what am I doing? Am I just going to move to someone else?
Well, the thing thing is, you can't force anything.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're dating someone and you're just waiting for that spark to show up,
You definitely
then you need to get the fuck out of that
It's
relationship.
not fair to anyone.
That's not
in
fair
that
to
situation.
anyone.
No, I
So
think
you
it
can't
happened
force
soon.
a spark.
Yeah.
But it is good to keep an open mind and say, maybe you're like not really dating this person, but to get to know them on a friendship level,
Yes.
not waiting for a spark to happen, but just seeing where things go.
Right. I think that's the key point. Like if you're waiting, it's not going to happen.
The problem is, and I often think that this is a curse for those of you who've sparked with people, right? Because I have friends who've never sparked with anybody. And I'm like, it's actually kind of a blessing. It's kind of a blessing for them because they're kind of like, I don't know what that feels like. So it's all equal. But for those of us who felt the spark, it's like such a curse because we're constantly looking for it.
Yes.
It is that cocaine.
And it doesn't happen that often either.
And it doesn't.
That's
And
the part
so
that's
when
tough
it
about
does,
it. Yes.
you're like, whoa.
Like, I gotta go try
I
this.
gotta
That's
go
when you're
try
like
this,
willing to bend over backwards. You're willing to like
Yes.
be more cautious about losing it because it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you gave people maybe where there wasn't as much of a spark, more of a chance, you'd feel like you have more options maybe.
Yeah. It goes back to listening to your own intuition and saying, am I forcing this thing to happen or am I just
Right.
letting this thing naturally flow? Being open-minded, but also knowing what your baseline is. Like if you're thinking about that gold standard like Caroline's, focus more on the ending of that gold standard
Yeah.
as opposed to the beginning and say, okay, I don't want a repeat of that. Right. I just want the feelings, but I don't want a repeat of that again.
And maybe this is a good segue to takeaways, but I think there is the ability to separate the person and how you felt. I mean, I think regardless, like you obviously like cared for this person and loved this person in many situations. So I'm not saying like, oh, just like pretend like they meant nothing. I'm not saying that, but like if you can separate like, yeah, I love this person, but what I really, really loved that I want to find again is these feelings, not necessarily like I need to replicate this exact person.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to replicate that person.
No. Takeaway for me is to focus on how someone makes you feel by their actions versus the qualities that you find so admirable. I mean, those are important too. But when we start making our list of qualities we want in our future partner, it should always be how they make you feel. I want to feel secure. I want to feel loved. I want to feel supported. I want to feel these feelings. And those can only be done through their actions for you specifically. Like you said with your gold standard, he was so obsessed with his now wife that he would stake out places where she was because he couldn't get enough of her. That's how I want my partner to feel about me.
Yeah.
And we all should feel that way. And that has nothing to do with how hot he was or how interesting and witty and all that. Because end of the day, someone who's hot and witty can get anybody.
Right.
Okay.
True.
So everybody will point those factors out as like very interesting characters.
I think to piggyback off of that, I think it's great to have these people that are just wonderful, right? Because you know that one, they exist.
Yeah.
Two,
nice
like
little
you
reminder.
know certain qualities of like how great you felt and what it was about them. But I also think we need to take them off pedestals and just accept that like they are a person too and they had a place in our life. And I'm saying this is like way easier said than done. And I think it takes a lot of time to get there because I think the more we hold on to them as this like gold standard, this person above everyone, you're just not going to meet someone else. I experienced this with my ex and it took like 2 years to like fully get over him. And I could not meet anyone else in that time because I was so like invested even though we weren't together.
Yeah.
And it just like there was no chance that anyone would have come close. And I think the second that I actually like mentally was like, I'm over this, that's when I actually met someone, which is like the crazy part of it.
Yeah. Our memories are very selective. I learned this. When I was dating a lot in New York, I kept a journal of everyone I dated. So what I would do is I would write down after each date how the date went as if I was telling a girlfriend. So highlights, okay? All the great qualities.
I like that.
Kind of like selling him to my girlfriend. And then on a weekly basis, I would have a sit down and say, this is a get real session. And I would write down every memory that I didn't want to remember about the person.
Yeah.
So like every little annoying thing they did or something they said to me that bothered me. When you look back on the get real
that's
section,
so good.
then you're like, damn, my memory is so selective. I totally forgot this happened.
And you have to do it in the moment, because if you do it too late, you
then
won't
you
remember it.
won't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
And there were moments where I was like so obsessed with this guy, and in those get real journal entries, I read them and I'm like, oh my God, how could I ever fall for this guy?
Yeah.
Because he was such a...
Or like there's red flags.
Oh
and
yeah,
just, like,
so many red flags.
Like,
I
you
will
have to avoid them.
say, like, I never did it to the level of like what they said and what they did, but I definitely did like a journaling exercise of like, what great qualities did my ex have? And then what qualities were something I just could not stand.
Right.
And like
Deal breakers.
that I don't want in a future partner, because
Yeah.
I think you won't compare the next person identically. Like you'll be like, yeah, they have a lot of shared qualities with this person. However, they have some differences.
We put the gold standard on this pedestal, and we keep thinking that we're like the reacher in this imaginary relationship. We're reaching for this person on the pedestal. And my mom always reminds me of this. She's like, imagine if, we always talk about my gold standard. She's like, remember when your relationship with him, how insecure you were, how tumultuous it was. Imagine if you were actually married to him. Would he still be on a pedestal?
Exactly.
And so she's always like, let's reality check here, okay? If you were married to him today, in 2019, what would that relationship be like?
That is a great way to think about it, because I think this is another point. It's not always the length of a relationship.
No.
It can be this short, like intense burst.
Yes.
And in that, especially when those ones happen, you don't see this like long 10-year plan, 20 years like life together. Like you see 3 great months. Like you don't see all of the up and downs
see
and
the
how
future.
Right.
Yeah.
What other takeaways do you have, Caroline?
I really like what you said about how they make you feel.
Yeah.
Because that's not really the lens I've taken, and that's probably where I've gone wrong. So
all of us have been
I
there.
plan on making that list when I get home.
Because we spend most of our 20s trying to win people over.
Yes.
Right? Everyone's like always trying to win at this dating game. I just want him to like me back.
I don't even want to say just 20s. I think people would argue that it continues way over sometimes.
But then when you sit back and you think, how do they make me feel? What are they doing to make me like them?
Right.
Maybe it's nothing. And then you feel like a fool.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. Okay.
Different perspectives. Question of the day?
Yeah, let's do a question of the day.
This one comes from Maya. I'm married to my first real love, someone I fell for hard. When we first met, we were obsessed with each other. But now those feelings have faded after 5 years, and I'm interested in exploring other people and how they could possibly make me feel. How do you guys feel about bringing this up to my husband? Pretty much the opposite of what we've been talking about.
I mean, I guess it depends what Maya's looking for. Like, if she really feels like she wants an open relationship, she needs to explore, like maybe that is something that she could float with her husband. Again, I don't know how conservative her husband is or what his opinion would be, but I think what I would maybe persuade Maya to do is to think about, like, is this like a fleeting feeling? Have I been feeling this for so long and I'm finally not suppressing it? Like, is this just like a new, I looked at my husband and he's not the, like, I don't know, he's sitting on the couch and lazy or whatever. Like, I guess like maybe take inventory of like why you're feeling this and then like go act accordingly. There's also like the point of like, why has the spark died? Is it because when you first met you were like going out all the time and you were like romance,
you were 18
like, or just like even just like, you know, like holding hands or like affectionate, like has that stuff gone to the wayside the more like comfortable you get? Are you just like spending every Saturday night home sitting on the couch? Like maybe it's like you need to get that spark back.
It's just like, I don't know what to say, because it's sort of like you kind of don't know until you've sampled a lot of things. But if you're with someone that you initially sparked with, like you don't know what else is out there, but it might not necessarily be better. And even if it feels spark better, it might not be goals better.
Right.
You gotta weigh that.
It's kind of a catch-22. If you marry the person you sparked with really hard, that's great. but also it sets a really high standard for the rest of your relationship because you keep feeling like you need that spark back. But again, we said with any relationship, it evolves over time. Your feelings evolve over time. So again, with Maya, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a committed relationship? Do you want to be in a committed relationship? If you do, you commit your feelings too. And know that your feelings come in waves. But I'm also a huge supporter of exploring and getting yourself as much experience as possible in the dating world to know what you want. Because sometimes you really don't know what you want. And for some of my friends who've been in long relationships have taken a break to do that, to just kind of go explore or do an open relationship, or there's so many different formats of a relationship you could explore. But again, it's what you're looking for.
I mean, it's not one size fits all. It really depends on like you, your relationship, your partner, your views. Like, do you have children? Do you have other people that are impacted if you do take a break? Like, there's so many different factors.
Can you go to couples counseling? You know, it's every relationship is so different. We can't judge anybody for what they're going through. So all I can say to you, Maya, is sit down with your husband and tell him the truth. Tell him how you're feeling. See how he feels about it and make it a discussion as opposed to, you know, you trying to figure this out by yourself.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
Maybe he also feels like the spark has died and is willing to work with you to get it back. Or maybe he is open to an open arrangement.
If all else fails, try vibrating cock ring. I don't know. That will bring the spark back. Or not. Make it really awkward. All right. Anything else?
Well, I was going to make a fun food metaphor. I was just thinking back to when I first had my favorite ice cream back in DC as a kid. It was Oreo ice cream from this place called Bob's. And that flavor of that Oreo ice cream has been my gold standard for Oreo ice cream forever. To this day, I still remember what it tasted like. I still compare every other ice cream I have.
This is so big. I've had the same experience.
Our food like that, I don't know, but...
And you went back and did you have it and did it taste that good?
You know, I moved away and I think they closed because I tried to look it up.
So that happened to me. Mint chocolate chip, this place around the corner from my house. And then I had it years later and I was like, this is not that good.
No.
So that's the other thing is like you, again, it goes back to this like mindset of building this person on a pedestal is like years later, you actually could meet up and that spark isn't there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually do need to like meet that person again or talk to them.
I think for me, what was hard is I would still date him if he was single.
I think the key for you though is that he is not single.
Right.
He is off the market, right?
Yeah. We're moving.
So I think yours is different because there isn't like a path forward. So it's like accepting that. So I think it's like if you've had these lingering feelings for someone, maybe it is worth, if they are single and open to, maybe it is worth re-exploring and seeing if it's still there. And if they're not single, accepting that and not having them as the gold standard anymore.
Yeah, and stop calling them the gold standard.
Yeah. Right.
They're just an X.
Right.
Just an X. And you only know what you know. What if there's someone else out there that you could spark with even more?
Yeah. That'd be awesome. I hope I meet them this year.
To moving forward. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for telling us your feelings about this X. But also sharing a very honest story that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Totally.
A lot of us have been there. And maybe it's not even a gold standard. Maybe it's just someone recently that you dated that you're like stuck on, or someone from just a few years ago. It doesn't have to be a gold standard, but it's really hard for us to move from the past.
Yeah.
It's just the way we were. I think we can take away some great advice on how to just move forward in general.
Yep.
So thank you for that. And for anybody who's listening and wants to share their story, maybe you are the gold standard for someone. Or maybe, I like this topic too, the one that got away.
Yeah.
You have the one that got away and you're just dying to reunite with them again.
Maybe you weren't ready.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Maybe you realize they're still single. We can make it happen. Let us know. We can reach out to them.
Maybe at the time you didn't think they were the gold standard, then you dated enough and you realized.
Yes. You did a little comparison shopping. Anyway, we're still booking guests for season 8. We love to hear from you. Let us know. Reach out to us at dateablepodcast.com. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Stay dateable. Your action item for this week is to reframe how you think about your gold standard. Instead of putting them on a pedestal, put them back in the lineup of past dates. To keep it in perspective, physically write down all the positives and negatives about that relationship. And when you find yourself comparing again, refer back to this list. Remember, you have yet to meet your real gold standard, so don't let this one get in your way.
Want to continue the conversation? First, tag us in any post with hashtag StayDateable. Then head on over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes, as well as articles, videos, and our coaching services with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. To connect with us, find Dateable Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're also downloadable on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.